From the New York Times, this is The New Washington. I'm Michael Barbaro. Today, Sean Hannity.
If influencing elections are so bad, then why did Obama try to influence the Israeli election and defeat Prime Minister Netanyahu? The unsolved murder of former DNC staffer Seth Rich continues to get a huge amount of attention.
Is there any evidence that he might have been disgruntled at the treatment of Bernie Sanders?
I lived in Alabama. When everything comes out, they will make the best decision for their state. I am not going to stop trying to find the truth. That's what we do here every single day. I humbly appreciate your support, but I'm asking you to not smash your Keurig.
Welcome to Hannity. Tonight we are following four major breaking news stories. But first, things are starting to move at an accelerated rate. We are now closer to getting to the truth about what is the biggest national security breach and Russia scandal in American history. Hillary Clinton's campaign, the DNC, they paid for the research that became the fake news anti-Trump dossier. They've been lying to you for a year, plus never Trumper senators. Bob Corker, Jeff Flake, John McCain.
There is nobody with a bigger reach on television among cable commentators than Sean Hannity.
Matt Scher recently spent time with Fox News host Sean Hannity.
Full report on that. These senators seem to be more interested in attacking the president than they are in serving you, the American people, the forgotten men and women in this country.
On an average night, he gets a little under 4 million viewers. We're talking 2 million more viewers on any given night than Anderson Cooper's show, for instance. So just in that alone, there's no rival on television. On radio, he still comes in sometimes behind Rush Limbaugh, but he will be number one within a matter of years. His ability to dominate the discourse is unrivaled right now.
Now, got in a lot of trouble up here. Well, this is Polk Street where I went to kindergarten. And when the winter time came, be ice and snow, and what we would do is we'd wait for cars to stop here, get on the back, and they'd pull us. I got in trouble. Let's put it this way. The cops took me home in first grade for that. That wasn't a good day of my life.
Matt, you went with Sean Hannity to visit his hometown on Long Island. Tell me about that. Where did he take you, and what did you see?
So Hannity grew up in a town called Franklin Square, which is about an hour drive from Manhattan. When Hannity was growing up in the 50s and 60s, it was pretty solidly Irish-American, Italian-American, Jewish-American, blue-collar.
Looks like a good place to grow up.
It was all the people, a lot of cops, a lot of civil servants, a lot of Con Ed guys, a lot of, people that worked hard for a living.
So Hannity's parents were both second-generation Irish-Americans, and they'd both grown up extremely poor. The mom in the Bronx and the dad in Bed-Stuy in Brooklyn. And they'd made it to Franklin Square after Hannity's dad returned home from the fighting in the Pacific in World War II. And so for them, Franklin Square was like the promised land, right? It was, here is a house, here is not an apartment building. Here's a house with a backyard that we're going to own. And his parents were tireless workers.
My mom worked at the jail up here, which is not that far. My father worked in Queens at family court. A lot of civil servants, a lot of people in my extended family in the NYPD.
Yeah.
Some made it to the FBI. That was a big deal. My sister once worked at this Burger King. That was fun.
And the house, to a large extent, was conservative, but it was a conservative that is not necessarily how you think of Hannity's conservatism. Like, you think of it now, they didn't talk about it at home all the time. It was more of you're going to work, you're going to save your money, you're going to go to Catholic school, you're not going to take a lot of vacations, you're going to be expected to be a good Catholic kid. It wasn't sermons about politics all the time.
They must have been proud.
I think they were.
You know, after my father died, my mother said to me, your father would listen and said, where the hell does this come from? How did he get like this? Where did all these opinions come from? This was here forever, the fire department. This diner, you know, when we were done with our...
And who was young Sean Hannity out there on Long Island?
To a really remarkable extent, when you talk to Hannity about his childhood and you ask him about, okay, well, where did this come from, right? Where did your partisanship emerge from? And it really came from talk radio.
My parents would come in my room all the time, and it wasn't turn off the TV, which was black and white. It was turn that blankety blank radio off. Now, turn it off. And I'd be, all right, go ahead. And then they'd leave and I'd put it back on. And that was just really the infancy stage of talk radio.
And what is on your mind this afternoon, huh?
His politics gradually became informed by that sort of combative early talk radio. There's this guy, Bob Grant. He's dead now, but he was a New York talker.
But right now, it's Diane, who is our first caller.
Yes. Oh, okay. I'm calling. I just turned on the radio, and I must say I'm kind of outraged here, Bob, to hear you referring to American blacks as savages. How dare you?
I dare very easily, because if they act like savages, I call them savages.
You can't say they. Do you know that Europeans were barbarians?
Here we go. So long, babe. Is scum.
He was sort of
Benny is checking in. Hello, Benny. Benny
ancestor
from
of Rush Limbaugh. Let's put it that way.
Here's the answer to your question. Genesis 28.
Oh, I know what you're going to say about why people have children.
And replenish the earth.
Bob Grant, I started listening to him. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, get off my phone, you creep. You know, he grew up under Joe. And when I started to talk radio, I tried to be like him. That didn't serve me well.
And Hannity would listen to Grant talk about welfare. He would listen to him talk about law enforcement, about crime. And that really obviously entered his bloodstream at a relatively young age. We're talking 11 or 12. He was listening to this stuff all the time.
I don't know. I just was interested in it. I was interested in, it was an education.
And there were always guns in the house. There was never a time where there were not guns in the house. And Hannity himself shot from an early age and has continued to shoot. So, you know, there are parts of his conservatism that you can trace directly to his family and parts that come from his tutelage in talk radio.
So when we think about the kind of cauldron of his conservatism as a young man, it's two parents in law enforcement. There are guns around. This is a working class community of proud Catholics, it sounds like. And then on top of that, we have a young Sean Hannity in that environment consuming day and night an early version of conservative talk radio.
That's exactly right. You know, there's a lot going on there. But I think that when we're trying to figure out exactly where his viewpoints started to sharpen, it is through radio, right? I mean, he saw in radio, in these early hosts like Bob Grant, an ability to entertain people, to be political, but to also be highly entertaining and to be provocative for the time. He understood that. I mean, he really studied how these people were able to resonate with their audiences.
Also breaking tonight, it is a nightmare over at NBC News. Their star anchor, Matt Lauer, fired after disturbing claims of sexual misconduct. Tonight, the question, what did NBC executives know? What did other hosts know? And when did they know it? It also appears the chaos over at the Peacock Network is really getting to liberal Joe Scarborough. He is now lashing out at President Trump like never before. We will show you his complete and total emotional national meltdown. Plus,
what are the recurring elements and tactics of a Sean Hannity segment?
So his tactics and his preoccupations are separate. Let's do the preoccupations first. If you watch the show on a regular basis, you will be returned to these themes over and over again. Respect for law enforcement and the military, is enormous.
Do blue lives really matter to liberals and the mainstream media? Now, if they do, then the left needs to explain why the death of convicted drug dealer Freddie Gray is getting so much more attention and causing more outrage than the murder of decorated NYPD officer Brian Moore. Now,
this idea that the America that Hannity grew up in is slipping away is paramount. This idea that the values that his parents had, the values of Franklin Square where he grew up, are gone.
That's what he's talking about. Where's extolling America's greatness and goodness and charitable and how we have protected the world from tyranny time and again?
You have this idea that is sort of a Bannon-esque notion that the establishment is crooked, is in league with the liberal media.
All right, so snowflake anchors and reporters, they're whining, complaining about President Trump daring to call them out yesterday.
It's oppositional, right? I mean, his preoccupations are oppositional. They don't exist in a vacuum. He is pushing off other things. So that's why the liberal media, quote unquote, is so important to him, because he frames himself as separate from that. He frames himself as a truth teller in an era where the media doesn't want to tell you the truth because it's in bed with Democratic politicians. So that bleeds into the tactics a little bit, because that is how he structures his show. If you watch his show on a regular basis, a recurring tactic is to take clips of liberal politicians or liberal commentators saying something, and then Hannity looking aghast and shaking his head at how anybody could believe that. And now I'm going to tell you how it actually is.
And of course, there's former Obama National Security Advisor Susan Rice. And yesterday she said, oh, there's not really much that we can do to prevent these types of terror attacks from happening. Really? Watch this.
We are battling ISIS in Syria and Iraq, Al-Qaeda and ISIS in Afghanistan, and we see elements of the terrorist threat in all parts of the world, from Africa to the Middle East. There is no easy way to predict and defeat every single one of them, and so we have to strengthen our intelligence, our law enforcement, and work together with critical partners like the United Kingdom.
After 8 years of your administration being unable to acknowledge radical Islamic terrorism, we need lectures from you? I don't think so.
So that's a tactic that has brought him, I mean, it pays pretty great dividends for him. It works really well.
Did you think when you first started in Fox and TV, did you think that Fox was going to be as influential as it got to be?
No.
What do you think what is your explanation for what happened?
Monica Lewinsky in '98, where 2 years on the air was huge for us.
Yeah.
And we just got better and better. I mean, I just work hard. I don't focus on anything except the show. And I like to sculpt. Every day I'm sculpting shows. That's really all it is. And all day long, I'll usually talk to my producers and dictate a monologue in the morning and say, I want this and this. And then, of course, the dictator will say, and get me tapes of every liberal saying, Trump is evil. Get me tapes of every, all the mainstream media saying Trump is evil. Get me tapes of this. Get me tapes of that. And I want a montage of this. And then I do a lot of that. And then all throughout the day, I'll be, even in the middle of radio, because radio is great prep for TV, I'll be texting them, add this, add this, add this. I'm going to add this. And so it's like all day long, you're honing it, you're sculpting it. All right, take that out. I want this in. I want this out. I want this in. Very, very hands-on. I just have to, this has to be me.
You shadowed Hannity as he put together both his radio and his television show. And I wonder what stood out to you about his process.
So Hannity, again, it works best when he's oppositional, and his producers know that. So he has a pretty large staff at Fox News in the 30s of producers and researchers and writers. And what they'll do every morning, Hannity at his home on Long Island will read the news. He starts with the Drudge Report and kind of goes through the various outlets. He reads the Times and the Post and the Wall Street Journal. And at the same time, his producers in Manhattan are on social media, on news websites, pulling together material that they consider to be particularly outrageous and to make liberals look stupid. Now, the show that I watched, the radio and Fox show that I watched, these shows were broadcast on October 2nd. And that was right after the shooting in Las Vegas.
And welcome to this live breaking news edition of Hannity. Tonight, America in a state of shock after a madman opened fire on a country music festival in Las Vegas.
So both the radio producers and the television producers had found this Facebook post, which was everywhere on conservative media, by a CBS executive.
And sadly, it gets even worse. A top lawyer for CBS was fired earlier today after writing on Facebook. Listen to this, quote, "If they wouldn't do anything when children were murdered, I have no hope that Republicans will ever do the right thing. I'm actually, listen to this, not even sympathetic because country music fans are often Republican gun toters." Wow. This has nothing to do about which party you support.
And that CBS executive was later fired. She apologized. But for Hannity and his producers, it doesn't get much better than that, right? Because they can take a comment like that and they can say, look at what liberals think of you. Not just Americans, but look what they think of you, you people who consume conservative media, and you Republicans, this is what the liberal establishment thinks of you. Doesn't that make you furious? And it works. Man, does it work.
What do people now, when they see you, what do they want to say? Like, if you...
More than anything else, thank you, keep fighting. Thank you, we're glad you're out there fighting. Unless they hate me.
Have you had that happen to you?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
But most people are very nice.
I mean, if you talk to Hannity viewers or listeners, they will return to that idea that the liberal media hates us and they're not in touch with us. They don't understand us. They want to dismiss us.
I think it is incredible. It takes my breath away, but in a weird way, I'm thankful. Because if the media wasn't so lazy and they weren't such a bunch of sheep and they had the ability to at least try to be objective, then I wouldn't be unique. I feel like they have left wide open. There's a gaping hole, and that I have built a career on that hole. And, you know, I have to be careful not to be wrong.
Now, I should say that there is not a lot of, there's often not a lot of vetting that goes into this. I mean, Hannity would tell you that the stuff is rigorously vetted.
I can't tell you how many texts a day if I see something on Twitter. I'm kind of blessed we have this at Fox. I'll send it to my producers. Please vet this. Please vet this. All the time. We do it every day. My monologues, we vet my monologue. That's why I try to start early in the day. We vet everything we say.
But it just so happened that the show, the Fox show that I watched, they discussed this tweet from a woman, a Twitter user who identified herself as a teacher in the Midwest, who said something similar to what the CBS executive had said.
I have a tweet from a teacher. Pray that only Trump-tards die. Seriously?
So what, we voted Trump, so we deserve to die?
You don't have a...
So we deserve to get shot because we've voted for Trump? Is that what the left is saying?
Where is your human
insanity.
soul to tweet that out?
Now, it turned out that that tweet was almost certainly fake. It was a trolling operation. But Hannity didn't mention that on the air, didn't mention that on the radio. And so it just feeds into that same thing, right? It doesn't matter. He only acknowledged that it was fake to me after I brought it to Fox News' attention. And that was days later. So, but if you watch the show, you were thinking, oh, look at this person. Look at this teacher in the Midwest who thinks this about us. And the outrage is just enormous. We'll be right back.
We condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence on many sides. On many sides.
Now, all weekend long, I, like many of you, watched the media going insane, acting like they didn't know what the president was talking about. They ran with a false narrative all weekend. Oh, big story. He didn't mention the groups by name. Well, it couldn't be more obvious, more transparent who the president was talking about. He was standing for equal justice under the law, against racism.
if you talk to some of his viewers, some of his most faithful viewers, a lot of the time what they're tuning into is to see a support for the president that they feel is missing somewhere else. I've heard this word for word from viewers. Well, I watch him because the rest of the media has their knives out for Trump. They are biased against Trump. They're corrupt. But here's a guy who is supporting our elected president, and that makes me feel good. That makes me feel happy. That gives me a reason to tune into the show. So, look, he would not deny that that is part of his appeal, right? That he likes the president and supports his agenda.
Now, President Trump and the people that voted for him and that support his agenda, they don't like racists. They don't like bigots. They do not like what went down in Charlottesville. Conservatives that I have known my whole life, Republicans I have known my whole life, people like me. What was this election about? The forgotten men and women.
Matt, why does Sean Hannity matter so much right now? Why are we talking about him?
I think there are two reasons, and they're more or less concurrent. One has to do with Fox News specifically. So Fox News, obviously, it's no secret, is a major force in Republican politics. And Hannity is the anchor. He's the biggest star on Fox News, which is arguably the most influential network on the air right now. So that's part of it. And I think that would be the case even if Trump was not president. But you also have the fact that Trump and Hannity are extraordinarily close, and have been for years. So you have this scenario happening where Hannity is the face of Fox News, and he also has the ear of the president in a way that is historically unique. I mean, broadcasters have been close to presidents, columnists have been close to presidents, but the relationship between Trump and Hannity is different than other relationships that have existed in the past. Hannity has Trump's ear whenever he wants it. And so when we're thinking about how Trump's worldview has been melded and has been manifested, Hannity is a major part of that.
When did you first meet Trump? Do you remember? And did he ever call into your show? Like, is that...
My radio show, yeah. He was on my radio show more than the TV show at that time. Well, I didn't have the TV show at that time. And it would just be once in a while he'd call me, call in, and he was a great guest and a lot of fun. And, I always liked him. And we got along. We just got along.
Did you see him socially at all?
No, I've never played a Trump golf course. I've never stayed in a Trump hotel. And, when he was running and it was him only, I remember one time I said to him, I don't need your golf course. I don't want your plane. I don't need your hotels. I said, if you're going to do anything for the country, save the country. Do right by the American people. And I remember he looked at me and said, wow, you're really committed to this. I said, yeah, I really am.
Matt, I want to talk about a moment that it seems really solidified the relationship between these two men as it exists today. And that's the release of the Access Hollywood video in the final days of the campaign and how Hannity responded to it.
I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. You just kiss. I don't even know it. And when you're a star, they let you do it.
Hannity's tack was, as Geraldo Rivera told me in an interview for the piece, his task was to sort of steady people who might be freaked out by the fact that this Access Hollywood tape could ruin Trump's candidacy.
So whether that's conservative lawmakers or possible Trump voters, Hannity saw his role as de-escalating that.
Exactly.
Can you talk a little bit about what you said to him?
No. I'll say this. I was a little bit of a liaison at the time.
So what he did was he said the comments were wrong. Trump had said as much himself.
Now, after the tape was released, Donald Trump put out a statement. It read, quote, "This was locker room banter, a private conversation that took place many years ago. Bill Clinton has said far worse to me on the golf course, not even close, but I apologize if anyone was offended." Joining us now tonight with reaction, Fox News contributor Monica Crowley, the host of Justice, Judge Jeanine Pirro. All right.
Hannity said, I'm not going to defend the comments. They were wrong.
Nobody's going to defend this. You can't defend. It is
wrong, it is inappropriate, it is outrageous. I don't think anybody's going to argue with that.
But he also said,
here is where we get into, I think, a very important question in this campaign right now. Because the media, by and large, and people in the media and people out in the public, they don't know about Juanita Broderick, who claims she was raped. They don't know about Kathleen Willey, who claims she was groped and grabbed and fondled and kissed against her will. They don't know that Paul Jones was paid an $850,000 settlement because then Arkansas Attorney General Bill Clinton exposed himself, which is beyond perverted. And when Hillary tweeted out tonight, "This is horrific, we cannot allow this man to become president," I tweeted back, well, why selective moral outrage? Where were you when Juanita spoke out, and Kathleen spoke out, and Paula spoke out?
Is the liberal media using this as a way to get Trump out of the race?
Right. Look, Mrs. Clinton enabled an accused rapist in this case and an alleged rapist in her husband. And we're talking about something Donald Trump said laughing with another guy 11 years ago. You know what, Sean? Russia today essentially threatened the United States with World War III with nuclear weapons, and we're talking about something Donald Trump was joking about 11 years ago. This country has serious problems, and we need to be focused on that.
And by doing that, he's raising this idea, he's raising this notion, he's allowing his fans to run with it, and he's giving Trump an amazing, he's giving him cover, basically, right? And it was Geraldo's opinion that Hannity's treatment of the Access Hollywood tape helped save Trump's candidacy because it steadied conservatism during that time. It allowed people to say, conservative lawmakers, conservative voters, to say, all right, it was bad, it was stupid, but this is not fatal. Whereas if you had tuned in to CNN or MSNBC around that same time, you would see people saying, well, it's over. How could this person who made these comments be the president of the United States? Whereas Hannity's tack was totally different. And he was right.
So it's possible to credit Hannity for salvaging the Trump campaign in that moment, somewhat.
I think it is, to a large extent, right? I mean, if you think about the number of people that Hannity was reaching during the presidential campaign and how forthright he was with his support of Trump and how people looked to him and how early he was in his support for Trump, he played a pivotal role, not only with the Access Hollywood tape, but with that specifically, in really steadying things and calming voters who might have been spooked by the emergence of that tape.
I'm reminded of the fact that President Trump watches Fox almost exclusively, and I assume watches a lot of Hannity.
Yeah, he watches a lot of Hannity. And he will often call Hannity after watching the show. That's when they do a lot of their talking in the evenings.
So around like 10 p.m.
Exactly. There's an interesting thing happening with Hannity and Trump's relationship where the way that I understand it from Hannity and my time with Hannity is extremely skittish about really getting into detail about his personal relationship with Trump because he doesn't want to be seen as bigfooting the president in any way.
Which do you think came first? Like, do you think that he saw in what you have been talking about in your political views a kindred spirit?
Do I think he saw that?
Yeah. Do you think he listened to you and thought, okay, this person thinks what I think?
I don't think so. One of the things I've learned about him, and I really believe very strongly, and I think it's a misperception, people always want to say that, oh, Bannon is his brain, or this person is his brain. It's not true. He listens to everybody, but he's his own man. Everybody, I can tell you, Matt, everybody told him don't tweet. Everybody I told, don't tweet. And no, I'm going to tweet. He makes up his own mind. But if you have a good idea, he'll definitely listen.
That he would be seen as any sort of advisor, informal or not, to the president is something that he handles delicately. But it's true. It's true to a remarkable extent, from what I can understand from my reporting, from people involved in Trump's campaign, from the White House, from friends of both the president and Hannity.
Matt, I'm so struck by the fact that both of these guys have broken so many rules on their journey to where they are. And now they're breaking the final rule together, which is a major cable news figure is on a daily basis advising a president who constantly violates all the norms of politics to begin with.
Yeah, and it's a feedback loop, though, isn't it? So Hannity does the show. Trump watches it. They talk. Then Hannity covers what the president does the next day in a positive light.
All right, once again, the Destroy Trump media has worked itself into a frenzy over a meeting that Donald Trump Jr. had back in June of 2016 with a Russian lawyer. The press is running wild, all types of black helicopter, tinfoil hat conspiracy theories about Russian collusion once again. But of course, they're completely missing many of the key facts about this story.
This might be a provocative question, but in that strange partnership, who has more power, Hannity or the president?
I guess I'd answer it this way. Let's say Hannity one day dropped his support for President Trump altogether. Trump would feel the effect in a major way, in a really visceral way, if Hannity suddenly turned on Trump. I can't think of a way that that would happen at this point in time, but let's say it did. Trump would be in trouble. If Trump dropped his support for Hannity, I'm not so sure Hannity would feel the effects in the exact same way, because Hannity is so closely tied to the quote-unquote deplorables, as Steve Bannon phrased it to me. You know, he's the voice of the deplorables, that he would be fine. Those deplorables would still identify with Hannity and might even take his point of view over Trump's, right? So if we're mapping this out, in that sense, I think that Hannity does have the upper hand.
Matt, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
That's it for the final episode of The New Washington, at least for now. My partner on this was Carl Hulse, Chief Washington Correspondent for The Times. Our show is produced by Michael Simon Johnson and Michaela Bouchard. Brad Fisher is our engineer. Lisa Tobin is our executive producer. Samantha Hennig is our editorial director. Our theme music is by Jim Brunberg and Ben Landsberg of Wonderful. Special thanks this week to Rich Hawley. I'm Michael Barbaro. I'll see you Monday on The Daily.